Hello everybody, Jack O'Malley with my weekly update. I hope you are well. It has been hot as blue blazes here in the state capitol the last couple of days. And we from the Northern Caucus were joking that our blood's a little thick. This heat and humidity is not our style, so that's why we like living in the north. It's usually a little cooler, but I know it's been hot everywhere. So just want to chat with you about a few things that are happening this week. Last week I mentioned budget negotiations. They're still going on, and hopefully I'll have a little more for you next week on that front as we move closer towards that July 1st deadline. I still think the goal is to get that education done and the whole budget done by July 1. So again, they're talking, they're meeting. Our approps people, I give them a tip of the hat. They're putting in some long hours. So thank you to our appropriations committee members. They're working hard. All right, just a few things that have popped up in the news the last couple of days that I just thought were interesting that I'll throw at you. And then, I think a couple of big things I'll talk about here at the end, at the start. So this was a report. Remote elementary school learners were less likely to be engaged academically and struggled behaviorally and socially more than their in-person counterparts during the pandemic, according to a new University of Michigan study. Now, I know during the pandemic, there's a lot, or especially early on, we didn't know, we shut down. We can argue that foolishly or not. But we had so many schools that continued to stay locked down, and everybody knew that our kids were suffering from this. They said, the report goes on to say, overall school was more challenging for remote learners who were less likely to be motivated and more likely to resist to schoolwork. These students showed signs of hyperactivity and they had problems with their peers, with a possible explanation being fewer outlets to release their energy. Took a university researcher to figure that out. And here's the thing. There are virtual schools that do a great job, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, they are geared towards virtual learning. They really did. They've got it down. They figured it out. And number two, there are kids, some kids, and I've seen and I've been told, that really thrive on that virtual school. They're better at it than in person. And so virtual schools have a fantastically important place in our education system for those kids that really works for them. What the pandemic showed, in my opinion, was a lot of things, but one was virtual learning can't just be thrown together. So I hope, and again, I'm trying to be the optimist here. One of the things that I hope that we've learned about virtual learning is that it's going to need more nuance. We're going to have to sharpen that pencil a little more than we are, because there is a place for virtual learning. For example, snow days, snowed out, school, the boiler goes out and the heat goes off for 4 days. Maybe there's a way to send the week's work worth at home, and then they can do, where it becomes a stopgap, not the main focus. So this will be debated for many years. People have their opinion. I think that we are seeing that virtual learning during the pandemic has really hurt many of our students. And that's why I'll go back to what we talked about last week, the tutoring bill that it gets voted down or vetoed by the governor. Right now, many of our kids need that little extra help to help smooth over some of the rough edges that were left by pandemic and the closings of schools. And and that goes back to just another element that I have to say. There were a lot of schools that stayed open, and they worked hard to keep the kids safe. They worked hard to keep the schools clean and do everything right. And then there were other school systems that, for whatever reason, just stayed shut down. And that, unfortunately, is now being proved to be a very bad decision. So we move forward. Let's use virtual learning where it makes sense. Virtual schools, for certain kids, it makes sense, and they know how to do it. Let's figure out how we can tweak virtual learning for when it becomes a good short-term fix for snow and, heat and shutdowns, not a standard way to go, because kids are better in person. And I won't go on and on because we've discussed this for months and years now, but you know where I'm at. But thought that was funny. University of Michigan study proving what we all knew, that was common sense. Another package that is moving through the legislature. One of the issues is we need more ethics. Michigan in the state from a state legislature. We are one of 2 states that are bad in our transparency. Us and Idaho, I think it is. And there's a bill package that says, hey, there would be more transparency and more rules on the legislature, which I'll support these bills. A couple of them are you would have to the lobbyists would have to disclose money that was spent on staff. Right now, they got to say, if they took O'Malley out to dinner, bought me that club sandwich for lunch, it's got to say, we spent $12.47 on O'Malley. Well, in many ways, I've said this before, when it comes to things, staff, there is a very important inroad to any legislative office. So what this bill would say is, hey, if you lobby staff, you take them out to lunch, whatever, they need to be listed too. And I think that's a good idea. And one of the others was prevent lobbyists from paying for travel or lodging for legislators. That's a good thing. I mean, there are different seminars and groups and things like that that I know have paid for legislators' trips somewhere to go learn about something. But if a lobbyist is doing that, that's probably something that needs to. That would take away the. We're going to Maui to learn about whatever. Wink, wink, wink. Bring your clubs. So I think that these are all good things. I won't go into all of it, but I want you to know we are working on those ethics types things, and I think they will eventually pass when they get through the committee process. So I want to talk about 2 of the things I'm working on, right? One of which it was in the Transportation Committee, which I chair. So we had testimony. It was testimony only. We had... And what it is I've got bills that would change how we as a state handle people who've had a seizure in their driver's licenses. Because one of the biggest issues when someone has a seizure is you lose your license for 6 months, right? That's what everybody thinks. And that's what happens because doctors say, yep, can't drive for 6 months. But for a person who's had a seizure and they're on their medication and they're not having a problem, the loss of that license is terrible because, one, public transportation isn't equal around the state, and that might make it hard to get to school or work. Maybe you're now relying on friends and relatives to get you to and from for 6 months. That's quite the burden. Or said person, which I think happens a lot, says, I'm just going to drive anyway because I have to. I got to feed my family or whatever the case may be, right? So our rules, these rules on seizures and driving, they've been around for, I don't know. Nobody can find the beginning of them. So I've always said they've been around for 50 years. Just personally, I knew as a default, somebody, your relative had a seizure. They can't drive for 6 months, right? Doctors, I've talked to doctors. Yeah, well, if you have a seizure, you can't drive for 6 months, right? It's not actually true. There is this whole laborious process that has to get happen. There's a 6-page report a doctor has to fill out. The Secretary of State has to take a look at this, blah, 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 blah. We need to streamline that. And then I don't want people to have to break the law and drive because I got to feed my family. My bill is basically going to say, look, let's figure out all the minutia. We can do that. But basically, let's cut this down that says, look, if your doctor signs off, says, Jack had a seizure, which I haven't, just so you know, it's not about me. Jack had a seizure, and he is now on his medication, and I've watched him now for a few weeks, and he is A-OK. I am going to say he can drive to and from work or school. don't necessarily need to be going out, fishing. We don't necessarily need to go to the movies, but we want you to get to be safe. And I want to cut it from 6 months to 3 months. Unless, of course, there's other issues. I'm talking about the vast majority of seizure cases, which are nothing. So I shouldn't say nothing. I think you understand what I mean. That once they're on medication, you're fine. And what it was like 50 years ago to what it's like today, our medical folks know so much more. So that's a bill we're working on. Isn't going to move anywhere probably till the fall, but it's going to give us the summer to work with the Secretary of State's office. We had the Epilepsy Foundation in, the state's leading epileptic doctor research, and we had the Secretary of State in, and we also had a gentleman testify on having to live with this and the problem of no driver's license. So it was a very good hearing, good comments from the committee members, and I think we're gonna get this figured out. So if you have a family member that has had a seizure, you know what I'm talking about, and maybe we can make this better for folks moving forward. All right, so we'll see how that goes. All right, on Tuesday, my bill and Rep. Van Workum's bill got concurred in. We had a technical fix on our child care bills. All 8 bills are now sent to the governor. She is expected to sign them in the next couple of weeks. And at that time, these 8 bills will start priming the pump to get our child care system back into line. It's not going to happen overnight. We got to get people. We've got to use these funds. We've got to get things going. And I want to address one of the things I see on the comments, and I get it. And maybe I'm misreading some of the comments, because that's a problem with Facebook. You don't know what the intent was when they were pounding on the keys. But, one of the parents should stay home with those kids. You know what? I had a stay-at-home mom, and I know it was nice. But this isn't 1965, 1970 anymore. The world's a different place. Whether I like it or not, the world's a different place. And 2-income households are the norm. And when you have a solid, robust child care system, mom and dad are still in charge. Mom and dad still are doing things. So that whole, mom and dad should stay home. If you have that ability in your family, God, you are lucky, and I think it's the best way to go. But if you can't, we've got to make sure those kids are safe. Let them stay at grandma's house. Well, I remember when my mother, God bless her soul, she's getting up there in years, and she watched a couple of grandkids for a while, and it got tough on her. So just because it might have worked with your family doesn't mean it's going to work everywhere just that way. You got to think a little bigger than your lane. If that worked for your family, I am happy for you. But that's not the real world that we live in. And I can't turn back the dial. I got to deal with what's happening now. And our child care system is vastly important. It's amazing to think child care is part of our workforce situation. It's part of our economy. It can be overlooked, but it can't, because it's such a vital role, plays such a vital role in all that happens. And, the other thing I say, when people say, well, mom or dad, one of them should stay home. Well, here's a situation I've used before, and I believe it's sincerely true. Let's talk about that single mom. I'd rather have her working and being a productive member of society and engaging and getting out of the house, as opposed to being on public assistance, kind of stuck at home. You know what I mean? So there's lots of angles to this, and we can argue the right, the wrong, but the society today needs quality child care. And these 8 bills that were bipartisan, that in the early stages we fought back and forth, and I've talked about this before, the governor and I can disagree on a lot of things, and I know Governor Whitmer really doesn't care what Jack O'Malley thinks. I'm just a little over representative, but she is the governor. I can disagree with her on lots of things, and this is the part about governing that I think that's escaped some of us, in our general discussion, and that is we can fight tooth and nail on one item, but when we come together on an item, that's how it's supposed to work. As I've said dozens of times, 56, 20, and 1. You need 56 representatives to pass it out of the House. You need 20 senators to get it out of the Senate, and you got to have one governor to make it law. And if you don't have that governor, it doesn't matter if you have 56 or 20, right? So with these child care bills, I stand in lockstep with Governor Whitmer. On other issues, she and I might not agree, but on this one, we're together, and we got it done. So it was a good week. So with that, I'm going to slide out of here and head back to district, and hopefully it cools off a little bit for the weekend ahead so we can get out and enjoy. So I've gone long here today, so I want to say so long. We'll chat next week, and till then, be safe. Keep praying for all of us. We need those prayers from the governor right on down, all our elected officials. All right, take care.